Thank you.
I like to ask you a little bit about um, your introduction to space. I know you talked about being introduced to how space influences behavior, and also your introduction to beauty. You talked about how the people in the Netherlands would uphold a flower, a tulip, right? And and again, I noticed when we first met that you paid keen attention to detail, and I'm very fascinated to hear that you actually began this behavior since childhood. But how do you think, as Africans, we can promulgate this idea of paying keen attention to detail in terms of beautifying our spaces? Like I used to have, I'll just tell you this. I used to have this idea of, I grew up in a place called Aba, and when and then, my streets, the streets were not paved. When it rained, there was water everywhere, and you could hardly get around, move on to the next street or travel. And I used to wonder if neighbors could just come together and plant flowers to beautify their own spaces, right? So I'm curious to know, what are some of your ideas? How can we as Africans begin to reclaim our spaces, take ownership, as you put it, of our community?
That's a very good question, Prof. Like I said, even if I can touch on my experience having lived in Rwanda, there was, this I think it was once every week or once every month. It happened occasionally. Umuganda, which was a collection of community cleaning, where even the president himself would be found on the streets cleaning with the community. I look at it and I think, your question is sort of leading or alluding to leadership. And I feel that the role of leaders within, the African landscape has sort of taken a sort of a turn for the bad when you think collectively. We share a lot of values that are being heavily influenced by the West. And when you look at what the West has done in terms of quote unquote development, a lot of these small steps of progress forward have very little context in the African narrative. And what I mean by this is matters around, when we talked about, it takes a village to raise a child. When you hear something like that, it is very clear that, when I turn 18 in Africa, I'm not going to be thrown out of my family home. I turn 18 in America, not only am I an adult, I no longer really have a residence most of the time within the home and confines of my parents. So kind of going back to, some of the nuances of what we lost maybe throughout the 20th century, I think it's very clear that globalization has had a strong impact on us. So when you start to talk about, the steps that need to be taken, I don't think we need to adopt too much from the West. I think we need to reclaim and look back at how we used to engage. I still think there's elements of innovation and progressive thinking that needs to come from, say, a patriarch society. I think there's certain matters that Africans need to reevaluate and re-question. So yes, Prof, it's really comes down to leadership.
Somebody has raised their hands, and before I call them, I understand there's a big role that leaders have to play in this. But then you also said it takes a village, which makes me think that we all could become leaders in our own way in our communities. Maybe I'm just wondering if we could rally our neighbors and just start doing something instead of waiting for the government or for a leader to come and institute umuganda, right? I'm just, because I strongly believe bit of my small exposure to architecture and space. And as you put it, there's a relationship between space where you live and your behavior and how you act out and how you become productive and how you feel peace. And I really can't wait for Africans to start experiencing peace once again, because as you know, colonization left us damaged. And I think space is one of those ways we can begin to feel peace of mind, and we can start doing it without waiting for a leader. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. So while you think about that, maybe you could go ahead and react to that. And after that, Margaret, you have the floor. Go ahead, please. Balmoy, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I mean, Prof, when you start to ask questions around space, the first thing that I talk about when I look at education and learning from an African point of view, the first thing that comes to mind is the elders sitting underneath a tree, with the story aspect of them feeding to the community, either if it's folk stories, if it's matters around medicine, how to heal yourself, and it is not encompassed in, say, the institution of school, university. It is part and parcel of your everyday life. I think that we label so heavily spaces that you can only go to the library to study. I don't think that should be the case. You should be studying pretty much anywhere or eating anywhere. As Africans, we didn't have dining tables. We didn't have references to let's say facilities of certain amenities that you'd have to go to the pharmacy. There was either an auntie, uncle, medicine man, medicine woman. Everybody was sort of part and parcel of this community, helping. There was a problem that arose, they engaged. The Western culture compartmentalizes a little too much, in my opinion. And hence why I feel that spaces, and you also during this COVID time, we begin to see how our homes can function as multiple use spaces. And I think that is very indicative of where we are beginning to go. And I think technology is playing a very big role in this. And so for many reasons, I think technology could be the pro and con to answering a lot of our problems. Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Abe. Your name is Abe, right?
That's my father's name, but I can go with Balmoy.
Okay, Balmoy. So because Abe sounds like a Nigerian name. So.
Yes, we hear that all the time. Yes.
I'm glad you went to the ancient city of Ibadan, and I've been an architect. That would have maybe, I don't know if that played a role in you having to form the cave, because Ibadan, even in modern time, Ibadan still managed to retain that culture, that rich cultural, and you see it even in the way the zinc, the roof of the houses are laid out, and you can't help but to remember where the ancientness of that city. So, but I want to, with all your experience, both in the Western world and back to Africa, I want to point you to Eco Atlantic, being an architect. I want to put the big one to you. So tell us about that kind of concept and how that kind of weave into the African drive that you have.
Now, without being political about this, having my first experience, I think in Nigeria, I think it was 94, 95. And I think at the time, the only big street I recall that we used to do shopping, if you were, being told as a tourist where to go, there was a place called Allen Parkway in I think it was in Ikeja or somewhere. And, yes, and at Allen Parkway, then led me to hearing about VI, and this was and please note that we were stuck between, running back home to Ibadan to spend the night, coming to Lagos for, maybe no more than 8 hours at the most, because the highway was terrible to drive, drive at night. So the notion that there was this isolation on an island called VI, to me already was a behavioral indicator of, separating yourself from what I would say would be, the makeup and fabric of what makes a Nigerian's Nigerian. So when we talk about Eco Island and the type of money that's being plunged into this investment, I begin to question the intention or the output that would come from such a venture. Like I said, I'm the sort of person and who have also looked to work with the likes of Kunle Adeyemi, we've had great encounters, with his project he did, the floating school. But a project of the scale of Eco, if you were to think about the repurposing or placing investment in other parts of the nation, I could see, linkages between Jos and Wari, linkages from the east to the west. And I would also say my favorite city outside of Ibadan was Benin. I fell in love with Benin. So I look at Nigeria as a fertile land for storytelling, for heritage, for, for sort of the discourse of even looking at how diaspora, Africans in diaspora can come back and also be a part of this development. And the Eco Island is far, far removed from what the average Nigerian needs. So that's sort of my 2 cents, Margaret. It's nothing that I can celebrate because I don't adopt or practice beliefs around this very high-end, high-tech flying architecture. It's not in my DNA.
Sorry, sorry, sir, I want to follow up on that. So I'm glad you mentioned the floating school. That's
Yes.
that's around Makoko in Lagos.
Yes.
I am a Mandela Fellow, and the people doing things like that are people that work with us, Mandela Fellows in Nigeria. Some of us have been trying to do some things in the slums in Makoko area, and accommodation and buildings are part of it. So I want you to kind of align that because you have said that the system for Eco Atlantic clearly defies what you believe and what you practice. How can a place like Makoko with a slum, how can what you are doing make life a little easier or better for people living there and still manage to retain that ecosystem and that environment without disrupting it, but making their life much better? For people who don't know, Makoko, people live on water. They build their houses on water around the Lagos environment, and Eco Atlantic is a reclaimed land of Babbage in Lagos. They reclaimed it. I think that reminds me of also Cape Town. Something like that was done in Cape Town as well. So they reclaimed the land and they're trying to build skyscrapers and make it a different city on its own. So for people who don't have understanding, just want to give that background. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Margaret. I think it makes my response a lot easier now that you've cleared that up. But it's very similar to when you look at, if we're talking on the notion of reclaimed land, usually it is to repurpose a group of people, usually an overpopulation, notably the Netherlands. They reclaimed about 30% of that nation from the North Sea. Now, in Nigeria, I don't see there's a high density within Lagos, but I don't see there being an issue with land when it comes to matters of urban dwellers who then probably realize that the government, for one, is not playing the role. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach to strategy. I can honestly say that the Eco Atlantic Island would possibly create jobs, but equally, it is also going to continually separate maybe those at VI and then those at the mainland. one thing I can also say about Nigeria is your infrastructure. Movement in Nigeria is almost a direct correspondence with commerce. You know, it's so hard to get things done within a nation where moving from point A to B is almost as treacherous as, you know, and this is Lagos, excuse me, not just Lagos specifically, almost as treacherous as trying to, you know, move yourself within a war zone. You know, and I'll be very honest, because I find that moving groups of people from mainland to an island that is so far removed from reality leads me to then start asking questions. Yes, we do have climatic issues with rising seas, hence why I know that the likes of the Kunles and other types of architects are having these clear thoughts around what urban or informal living can begin to look like. How then can you start to support it? And it does not come in the form of luxurious spaces in Eco-Atlantic. It comes with trying to understand the direct needs of the citizens living in some of these communities. And that is just basically access to clean water, access to electricity, and just a decent roof over somebody's head. Now, you can continue to build matters of education, matters of entertainment. Those kind of follow as a secondary. But what is clear, and sort of addressing some of the points that you did make, is the location begins to become a handicap in how people strategize. I feel that the locale starts to say, okay, well, hey, we're not gonna start building inland towards Ibadan. We're gonna start building outward towards, you know, the ocean, with really hefty costs that go into just the implementation side, without even knowing whether people would buy into the high-rise skyscrapers. So I think your point is very clear, Margaret, but I still feel that a community-based approach, and definitely one from bottom up, needs to be addressed. And more importantly, understanding the importance of indigenous intellect. Indigenous intellect is something that is so far removed today. We don't address it anymore. And I feel that that's something that needs to be talked about quite heavily.
This is Ubuntu, a conversation with Africa. And so if you are a Lagosian or a leader in the great state of Lagos, please take heed. Or if you know someone that belongs in the cabinet of the Lagos state government, it would be great if you could share this wonderful feedback from an intellectual giant, an architect. Because I really do agree with you. The idea that people cannot move around is in Lagos is very handicapping. You know, so I think something needs to be done about that, so that people could feel free to live their lives and conduct business. AZ Bekao, you have the floor.
Hi everyone. Just want to say thank you to Prof for putting this together, and a big thank you to Balmoy and Margaret and every other person on the forum. A bit of introduction. I'm Liverpool based. I'm a property developer, and I was born in Aba, but raised in Abraba. And I've been listening keenly to the conversation, and just to pick up on what Balmoy said last about community-based solutions as regards to space planning. For us, I own a company called Intuitive Properties, and we're focused mainly on building spaces where people can live, work, and play. But if I take you back to my community in Abraba, in Nigeria, I've been doing a bit of research, and I found out that we have what we call the age grade system. And just going back to the bottom up ways that we can really impact our communities. And the age grade system has been going on for years. And the beautiful thing about it is my community has developed tremendously without any government support, without any external support anywhere. And the way the system works is each age grade made up of different people from all walks of life come together and they contribute and they take on a community project for a year. It could be roads, schools, hospitals, and that's been handed down. And if we had waited for the government, for the leadership to come and do that for the community, we would be nowhere. And that system has sustained my community. My community is known in Nigeria as a small London because of the infrastructural development that we have seen over the years. And if we can adopt that to deal with some of the challenges, so rather than just depending on one leader coming and saying this is how the community should develop, this is how we plan spaces, the age grade system made up of different people, professionals, tradespeople, everybody pulling together and being accountable to the community. It's something, because I think that one of the challenges we have as Africa is we hate or we don't like having difficult conversations. We hate having difficult conversations. And if we can have those difficult conversations, we will find that the solution is within our communities. We have 55 countries in Africa. Each community, I'm married to a Ghanaian, my friends are from South Africa, from all over, and listening to them, there's this technology, there's this innovation, there's this uniqueness about each community. But because we don't like having conversations, we don't like talking to ourselves, and we always see something Western as being a lot better than what we have. So we do what I call the copy and paste system without adapting it. I remember growing up, I grew up with Prof in about some of the architects started developing houses where I don't know if you've seen those houses where the roof system was a tar. They used the coal tar to make the roof. And over a certain number of years, the houses started leaking through. Why? Because people just went to, the Middle East, copied a system, pasted it into Africa, and we think, we hail that as being innovative, as being creative. No, we've had systems the systems that our forefathers using clay, can we adapt that to really create something that is sustainable, that is long-term? So rather than just copying and paste, let's research our local, I heard you talking about, I was really impressed by more listening to you talking about research, conversation, these kind of conversations, and innovating, using what we have. Africa's always been communal. We do things as a community. And that's why I really love this conversation that's going on, taking place. Is that something I can learn from my brother who's from Uganda? Is that something I can learn from my sister who's in Kenya? Is that something I can learn that is African and that is innovative? So I think someone did a research on the Igbo apprenticeship system, that it's only just come out to the world. So when I hear the West telling us, they discovered Nigeria, they discovered Ghana, and I'm like, for real? Well, my great-great-grandfather who was, fishing in the rivers, and, are you saying, so we don't tell our story. We don't have these conversations and we don't tell our story. I'll finish off on one. I was reading Frederick Forsyth's book on the Biafran War, which again, something we've never talked about as Nigerians. Sorry for all others who are not. I guess similar to all the countries in Africa. The Biafran War should have been a rallying point for us to, have a conversation, learn, and move forward. I found that during the Biafran, when Ojukwu was ruling, they had what they called a community of, it was like a community of elders. So everyone had a representative, and they had conversations, and they said, what can we do? What are the problems? So the feedback came from the community. we can have that in Nigeria. We can adapt that. Let's forget the politics of the Biafran War. But is there something we can pick up from, the start stories and apply to our lives and apply to our existence to better our communities? So there's technology, there's something out there, and I just think we should not just keep this forum for intellectuals, but let's bring everyone to this forum and let's have conversation and let's see if we can pick things. But yeah, I thought I'd just chip that in to help with the conversation and moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Before you have the last word about Moy, let me just say a big shout out. So to the Ekman Kuma 8th grade, which I belong. I know Ezigwe and I, we are from the same village called Abreba, which he pointed out. So the Ekman Kuma 8th grade is in preparation to celebrate what we call the Iguamang ceremony this year. And a big special shout out to the Ekman Kuma 8th grade in Cotonou, Benin, and the Ekman Kuma 8th grade of the Abreba branch, which I belong to both. And so, Ezigwe, I don't know where you belong, so maybe after this talk, I will give you a call to make sure that you are part of an 8th grade system, which you are here to espouse.
Definitely.
Very good, very good. And so, something that Ezigwe mentioned is, yes, growing up, we used to really like this idea of being called a small London, but I've actually grown to not to sort of dislike it, because I don't want my village to be small of anything else, right? So something you and I, we need to work on that narrative to change that. So Abreba is Abreba. Abreba is not small of anything, right? So I understand, of course, the idea that Abreba has beautiful homes and landscape, and so. But again, I think it's come from a place of a westernized mindset, and no one is to be blamed because we all have fallen into that trap. So, but anyway, thank you so much for beautifully laying out your thoughts, and then I will have the floor. I'll turn the floor now over to Balmoy to respond.
Well, thank you very much, Ezikepe. Is Ezikepe? Ezikepe. Hey, thank you, sir. Super. And I think you need to have more friends outside of just South Africa. So there are plenty of East Africans here who are willing to make friends with guys in Liverpool.
Yeah, I've got some of my friends in Kenya. One of your TV hosts went to uni with me in Liverpool. So yeah, I do have friends.
Oh, great. No, but thank you for your sharing your views. A lot of the experience. I actually, that's something I keep referring to, this indigenous knowledge. It's indicative to work part and parcel with science or with technology. Indigenous knowledge is really the backbone of what makes us Africans. And I would say this more from the point of what Africans used to assimilate to. These were the sort of the learnings, the intellectual discussions. And I think for what it's worth, they were so rudimentary in how the stories were being created that it was either very technical or it was in the form of parables, or in the form of storytelling around, familiar objects or experiences. And I feel that a lot of the world today, once again, with a copy and paste nature, gets mistranslated, especially at the paste point. Because when you're pasting, you're not really understanding even what you copied. So, when you look at it from a contextual point of view, you're still very lost. Yes, you're copying and pasting, but let me be honest with you. I think for many measures of that copy and paste, you pretty much have fallen by the wayside by totally ignoring the context in which you are living in and the needs of an African individual living in some of these communities. So I really think being in the real estate space, unfortunately, it's mostly bottom line is money, cost. But if you were to look at the value add, what is the value proposition? I think it needs to be around experience. It needs to be around notions of, you know, how then can, say, me living in Liverpool, be able to say, okay, well, the infrastructure of a home is that is of the land I live in, but then how then can you marry some of the can I say, the objects that then can sort of bring back a sense of identity. And I feel that the African American diaspora did a whole lot in terms of clothing, in terms of, and hair, you know, in terms of representation of linking them back to the land. But we don't look at it in terms of how we furnish space, how we address experience within space. You know, most of our products in our houses, most of the people have Chinese products, at least in Africa. And I'll tell you, Chinese products are one of the lowest contributors to a vibration. You know, when you think of a material, timber has a life, wood has energy, it gives off energy. Clay has energy, it gives off life. Thatch roofs is something from the land. You know, so when you start to look at the principal element versus, say, a steel object, you know, you've got to realize that materials give off energy. That energy then translates into the discourse of how people begin to think and also evaluate their livelihoods. That's just a different approach.
That is powerful right there. And that is our time. Thank you so much, Mr. Balmoy Albe. I think we may have to invite you back to the platform. For those of you who are new to City University, please leave your email and your number in the chat room. You can send it privately and we will be in touch with you. We meet at this time every Saturday for 1 hour, and that is our time. We want to respect everyone's time for being here. It's been a very fruitful and a fantastic and inspiring conversation. So tune back in again next Saturday for another conversation. I didn't mention this earlier, but Balmoy Albe is one of the members of the Council of Elders at the City University. We are very happy and proud to have him in the council. He's there with other amazing individuals. You continue to meet them throughout the next few weeks. They are coming in to express themselves and their thoughts and their perspectives about the future of Africa from different angles. So once again, thank you all for coming. Don't forget to share your information, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Africans.